So usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of precision, right?
Oh, absolutely. You expect hard facts.
Yeah, exactly. It feels it feels like engineering. Like you break your arm, you get an x-ray, and the doctor just points to that jagged white line on the screen and says, there it is. That's the problem.
Right, it's undeniable. It's completely visible to both of you.
And because we can see it, we spend, an incredible amount of time and energy and money trying to fix or optimize our physical bodies.
Oh, for sure. Gym memberships, supplements.
Yeah, buying those highly engineered, super expensive ergonomic chairs just to keep our spines aligned. But the second you step into the world of your internal life, like your mental space, that whole x-ray machine just shatters.
And it completely disappears.
Right.
Mm.
Suddenly there's no clear image at all. We rarely, if ever, actually sit down to fix the underlying system of our thoughts, mostly because we just can't see the broken bones of our anxiety.
Yeah, we can't point to it on a screen.
Exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to actually fix that internal system. We're unpacking a source text called Mental Engineering, the Art of Thought Filtration, and we're looking specifically at some really incredible insights from a segment called Mission 180.
It is such a fascinating text.
It really is. We are going to dissect two vastly different approaches to managing the mind. Basically, to give you, the listener, a concrete framework so you can finally become the master of your thoughts, rather than a slave to them.
And that lack of an x-ray you mentioned earlier, it creates what is essentially the ultimate diagnostic muddy water. I mean, we treat our minds as this intangible, mysterious cloud that we just have to, suffer through.
Right, like it's just weather we can't control.
Exactly. We accept mental exhaustion as just a baseline condition of being alive. But the premise of mental engineering completely rejects that idea.
Thank goodness.
Right. It frames the mind as a mechanical system. And any system, I don't care how neglected it is, it can be repaired, upgraded, and ultimately mastered.
Which is huge. And if you are listening to this right now, chances are you know exactly what that mental overload feels like. Just that sheer, heavy exhaustion of just thinking all day.
It's just processing.
Yeah. But to understand how to achieve that mastery and actually fix the system, we kind of have to look at what it looks like when it's completely broken down first.
We need to see the broken engine.
Exactly. So the source text introduces us to this character named Seth Karodimal. And the visual they use for Seth's brain is, it's going to resonate with literally everyone listening.
Oh, it is painfully relatable.
It really is. His mind is explicitly described as an open web browser with 50 tabs running simultaneously.
It's a profoundly visceral image, right? You can almost hear the computer's internal cooling fan just spinning out of control.
Oh, man, yeah. Just struggling to keep up, like a spinning wheel of death just hovering over your consciousness all day.
That is exactly it.
But for Seth, those 50 open tabs, they aren't, Wikipedia articles or paused YouTube videos. He is constantly trapped in what the text calls open loops.
Open loops.
Right. It's this relentless cycle of regretting the past and fearing the future. And the tangible result of this isn't just, oh, I'm in a bad mood or feeling a little distracted.
No, it's much heavier than that.
It manifests as severe mental fatigue and a significantly reduced ability to just make basic decisions.
And that aligns perfectly with the mechanics of cognitive load. I mean, when your brain is forced to run that many background processes, your mental RAM, so to speak, is entirely consumed.
Just eaten up.
Right. You are processing so much invisible data that you have literally zero processing power left for the present moment. You can't even focus on the person sitting across from you because 49 other tabs are demanding a fraction of your attention.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because, let's be honest here. Having 50 tabs open is basically just how modern life works.
Right. It is the modern condition, yeah.
Like if you're managing a household, a career, relationships, your finances, you are going to have open loops. I have an open loop right now about getting my car inspected.
Right, of course you do. So how do we distinguish between necessary open loops, like, planning for tomorrow's big presentation, and the kind of toxic mental clutter that is totally paralyzing Seth Karodimal?
Well, what's fascinating here is the distinction the source text makes regarding the actual nature of those tabs. The text points directly to the emotional weight of the loop.
The emotional weight, okay.
Yeah. It specifically calls out anxiety and regret as the actual culprits that crash the system. Because when you are planning for a presentation or, remembering your car inspection, that is an actionable process.
Right, I can do something about it.
Exactly. You prepare the slides, you call a mechanic, you set an alarm on your phone, and then you close the tab. The task has a defined endpoint.
The loop get closed.
Precisely. And that's the exact opposite of what Seth is doing. Regret over a conversation you had, like, 5 years ago, or fear about a potential economic downturn that hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah, you can't put those on a to-do list. Right. They are entirely non-actionable. They have no endpoint at all. They just sit in the background and drain your mental battery continuously without ever actually solving a problem.
So it's the difference between a software program that is actively compiling useful data and a program that's just stalled out, trapped in a glitch, and leaking memory.
That's a great way to put it.
So Seth isn't exhausted because he's doing too much in the physical world. He's exhausted because his mind is just spinning its tires in the mud of the past and the future.
And that constant spinning, it creates a state where you become a passive victim of your own internal monologue. You are basically being dragged around by whatever tab happens to flash the brightest or scream the loudest at any given second.
Wow. Okay, so if we recognize our own open tabs in Seth Karodimal, and I think it's pretty safe to say almost everyone has a little Seth in them, how do we get out of that mud?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. How do we force quit those tabs before they crash the whole computer? Well, that question leads us directly to the text's counterexample, which is a figure named Master Dinanath.
Yes. And Master Dinanath operates under a completely different paradigm. He doesn't just manage the tabs. He actually controls the entire browser.
He utilizes what the text calls a thought filtration system. Basically, he treats every single thought that enters his mind simply as an input.
Just a piece of data.
Exactly. If a thought is unnecessary, or if it's negative and not actionable, he just hits delete. By doing this, he only focuses his processing power on thoughts that actually align with his core mission.
He essentially acts as this uncompromising bouncer to his own nightclub. He stands at the door, checks the ID of every single thought, and if it doesn't serve the goal, it just doesn't get inside.
I love that. I was actually picturing it like an incredibly aggressive email spam filter.
Oh, yeah, like the automated rules.
Yeah. You know how you can set those up in your inbox? Like if an email contains the word lottery or prince, just send it straight to the trash. Master Dinanath has seemingly set up a spam filter for his brain.
He has.
But, okay, here's my issue with that. It sounds amazing in theory, but thoughts are not emails. They do not arrive neatly in an inbox waiting to be sorted.
No, they certainly do not.
They pop up totally uninvited, usually at like 3 in the morning when you're just staring at the ceiling.
Always at 3 in the morning.
Always. So if thoughts are just inputs, how exactly do we hit delete before the thought takes root and suddenly opens up another one of Seth's anxiety tabs?
Well, this raises an important question about the actual mechanism of control. We really need to look closely at the text's definition of mastery here. Because Master Dinanath does not stop the inputs from arriving.
He doesn't.
No, he isn't living in some magical enlightened void where negative thoughts or fears never even occur to him. That is biologically impossible.
Right, because he's still human.
Yeah.
His brain is still generating those inputs.
Yes, exactly. The mastery lies entirely in the fact that he chooses not to engage with them. When that 3 a.m. thought about a past regret pops up, when that spam email lands in the inbox, he doesn't open it to read all the details.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't click the suspicious link to see where it goes.
But how do you not engage? I mean, when the thought is screaming at you in the middle of the night, it feels impossible to just ignore it.
Well, you don't ignore it by fighting it. Because fighting a thought is still engaging with it. If you spend 20 minutes telling yourself, don't think about the embarrassing thing I did, you are actively focusing on the embarrassing thing.
Oh, right. You're just highlighting it.
Exactly. So the text suggests a shift in the allocation of your mental resources. You redirect the RAM to something tangible. Attention is the currency of the mind, right? So you simply stop funding the anxious thought.
Oh, wow. So you starve it.
You bankrupt it. You acknowledge the input like, okay, there is a thought about a past mistake. And then you deliberately shift your focus to your immediate physical reality.
Like what?
The rhythm of your breathing, the physical temperature of the room, the texture of the sheets. By redirecting the RAM, the 3 a.m. tab is suddenly starved of processing power. It naturally crashes on its own because you refuse to supply it with the energy of your attention.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So the delete button isn't this magical tool that erases the thought from existence before you even notice it.
No, not at all.
The delete button is the conscious, active decision to say, look, I see you, but I'm not going to sit here and fund you with my mental currency.
It's beautifully put.
Seth Karodimal goes bankrupt by funding every single fear and regret that walks through the door. But Master Dinanath keeps his capital strictly for thoughts that serve his goals.
Which is exactly why Dinanath has endless energy for his mission, and Seth can, barely get through the morning.
Yeah, but I can hear someone listening to this right now feeling a bit skeptical. They might say, well, that sounds very philosophical, but my anxiety feels physical.
Very physical.
Like my chest gets tight, my stomach drops. It doesn't feel like a choice I can just easily redirect away from. Is this just a clever metaphor, or is there something more substantial going on?
So the source text actually anticipates that exact skepticism. And it takes this brilliant turn by grounding the entire philosophy in the hard science of neurobiology.
Really?
Yeah. It proves that Master Dinanath's filtration system is a biological reality, driven by the scientific law of neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity,
Yeah.
right? The text states that whatever thought you repeatedly dwell on, your brain built a permanent physical pathway for it, like a literal neural pathway.
Yes.
So when Seth worries, he isn't just having a bad day, he is physically paving a permanent road in his brain for more worry. And when Master Dinanath filters his thoughts, he is paving a permanent road for concentration.
It is the ultimate example of form-following function. I mean, we used to think the adult brain was just this static lump of clay, but it's actually a highly dynamic organ that physically reshapes its own architecture based on how you use it.
That is wild.
Every single time Seth loops on a regret, neurons fire together. And the foundational rule of neurobiology is neurons that fire together wire together.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. I'm trying to visualize this. Wait, so if neurons wire together, is it kind of like a hiking trail through a really dense forest?
Oh, I like that. Elaborate on that.
Well, if you're walking a brand new path through the woods, say, the path of focus and concentration, it is incredibly difficult. There are branches hitting you in the face. You're tripping over roots. You have to hack your way through thick brush with a machete.
Right, it takes a ton of effort.
A ton of physical effort. But the more you walk that exact same path, day after day, the clearer it gets. The dirt gets packed down. The roots get worn away. And eventually it becomes a paved highway. You can basically walk it blindfolded.
That is a remarkably accurate way to describe the physical process inside the brain. And it explains exactly why Seth's condition feels so inescapable and physical to him.
Because he's been walking it every day.
He has spent years driving a steamroller over his worry trail. He has reinforced it thousands of times, so it is now this 6-lane superhighway with absolutely zero friction. When a stressful event happens, his mind goes down that highway automatically because it is the path of least resistance.
Wow. So what does this all mean for the listener then? Like, what about someone who has spent the last 10 years walking that exact worry trail, building up that superhighway of anxiety?
Right.
According to this rule of neuroplasticity, are they permanently stuck with it? Like, is their brain just fundamentally broken and hardwired for panic forever?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the most beautiful aspect of neuroplasticity is that it's entirely bidirectional.
Bidirectional. So it goes both ways.
It works in both directions, exactly. The text heavily emphasizes that Master Dinanath makes the path of concentration. Because the brain is ruthlessly efficient, it will always allocate its resources to the pathways that are used the most, and it will dismantle the ones that aren't.
Wait, really? So by repeatedly choosing to delete the worry, like by consciously refusing to walk down that 6-lane anxiety highway and redirecting your focus instead, you can literally dismantle a decade of anxiety.
Yes. Through a process called synaptic pruning, if you stop sending traffic down a neural pathway, the brain eventually notices. It says, hey, we're expending all this energy maintaining this massive highway of regret, but no one is driving on it anymore. Let's reclaim these resources.
Right, it is incredible.
The old worry pathways will actually wither. They'll overgrow with weeds, to use your hiking trail metaphor, and the new, initially difficult paths of concentration and focus will solidify, thicken, and become your new default highways.
Man, that shifts the entire paradigm. It means that your current state of mind, no matter how anxious or cluttered it feels right now, is not a life sentence.
Not at all.
It is literally just a snapshot of the roads you have been traveling most frequently up to this very moment.
It's incredibly empowering, but, it also places the responsibility squarely back on the individual. Neuroplasticity does not judge. It has no moral compass whatsoever.
It just does what you tell it to.
Right. It doesn't care if the road you're building makes you miserable or makes you successful. It simply builds wherever you direct your attention.
Which brings a very sharp point to how we manage our attention day to day. We We understand the biological stakes now, obviously. We know that our passing thoughts are literally wiring the physical hardware of our brains.
Mm.
But we need a framework to actually apply this.
Right, we need a daily practice.
Exactly. And the text provides a daily, actionable rule to ensure we are building the right paths.
A guiding philosophy, essentially, to help you sort all those inputs.
Yes, the text uses this really definitive metaphor. It says, your mind is a garden, not a trash can. And from that, the cardinal rule to live by is explicitly stated. It says, if a thought does not help you reach your goal, do not give it space in your mind. The text notes that today is the day to start pruning and sorting those thoughts.
Your mind is a garden, not a trash can. It is such a simple phrase, but applying it is ruthlessly effective. Just think about how a trash can functions, right? It passively accepts whatever garbage is thrown into it.
Yeah, you just toss things in.
Right. So if you treat your mind like a trash can, you are passively accepting whatever inputs your environment, your fears, or, the news cycle dump into it. You let it accumulate, and eventually it rots and degrades the entire system.
A garden, by contrast, requires intense intention. But let me push back on this a little bit, because anyone who has actually tried to keep a physical garden alive knows that gardening is exhausting.
Oh, it's backbreaking work.
It really is. Weeds grow automatically.
Yeah.
They do not need any help from you to thrive. Flowers, on the other hand, take constant work. Watering, measuring the soil, protecting them from pests. So, does this mean that thought filtration, this mental engineering, is an active, tiring daily chore forever? Because if I have to stand guard over my brain 24/7, holding a magnifying glass to pull out every single anxiety weed the second it sprouts, I'm going to end up just as fatigued as Seth Karodimal.
That is the most common and honestly perhaps the most valid concern people have when they start this process. And it allows us to really synthesize everything we've discussed in this deep dive.
Okay, good.
To answer your question, yes, initially, it is going to feel like hard labor. It requires the active, conscious mental engineering that the text outlines. You have to deliberately choose not to use your mind as a trash can for every passing fear.
So you really do have to hack through the dense brush of the new hiking trail. You have to manually catch the spam email and drag it to the trash folder yourself because the algorithm hasn't learned it yet.
Precisely. The first few weeks of pruning those automatic negative thoughts and forcing yourself to redirect your RAM are going to take significant cognitive effort. You will definitely feel friction. But here's where the biology saves you. Thanks to the neuroplasticity we just discussed, the garden eventually becomes easier to maintain.
Because the physical pathways in the brain are actually changing shape.
Yes. As you repeatedly practice thought filtration, you are literally wiring your brain to become highly efficient at it. The path of concentration becomes wider and smoother. The path of rumination becomes completely overgrown and choked off.
Oh, I see.
So that delete function, which initially required so much willpower and intense focus, becomes a deeply ingrained automatic habit. Your entire baseline state shifts. So no, it is not an exhausting chore forever. The mental engineering eventually creates a self-sustaining ecosystem.
Wow. So the flowers develop strong enough roots to just choke out the weeds on their own. The spam filter actually learns the rules and starts catching the junk mail before you even see the notification.
Exactly. You transition from being someone who is constantly fighting off thoughts to someone who simply does not resonate with unhelpful inputs. You become Master Dinanath.
Wow. Okay, let's bring this all together for you, the listener, as we wrap up this deep dive. We started with the very relatable, very painful struggle of Seth Karodimal. A mind overwhelmed by 50 open tabs of worry, regret, and non-actionable anxiety, leading to just total system fatigue.
Which is the unfortunate default state for so many of us in the modern world.
Right. But we learned that we absolutely do not have to stay there. By adopting Master Dinanath's mental filtration system, we can start treating unhelpful thoughts simply as inputs. We can choose to starve them of our attention, redirecting our mental RAM rather than engaging with the fear.
And we have the science to back it up.
Exactly. Because of the hard science of neuroplasticity, we know that this isn't just wishful thinking or some kind of placebo effect. By repeatedly choosing focus over fear, we are literally rewiring the physical neural pathways in our brains. We are abandoning the 6-lane highway of anxiety and paving a brand new road for concentration.
We are reclaiming the sovereign territory of our own minds. We are doing the actual engineering required to fix the machine.
We are turning the trash can back into a garden. Now, the source text actually teases a really compelling follow-up concept. It mentions that the next phase of this journey, once you start mastering your internal thoughts, is something called sense control,
Yes, sense control.
which sounds like a natural, if pretty intense, progression from thought filtration.
It is the logical next step in the curriculum because once you secure the internal system and stop the leaks from within, you have to look at the external inputs you are allowing through the gates. And that actually leaves us with a critical idea for you to take away from this.
Oh, let's hear it.
Well, we just spent this entire session establishing that we must ruthlessly filter our internal thoughts because they physically wire the structures of our brains. So what does that mean for the external inputs we willingly consume every single day?
Oh, wow.
If your mind is a garden, are the media you watch, the conversations you participate in, and the environments you expose yourself to planting flowers, or are they just dumping trash over the fence?
Oof. That is quite the provocative question to leave on. Are you planting flowers, or are you just letting the world dump trash over the fence? You know, going all the way back to where we started. You wouldn't keep walking on a broken leg just hoping it heals itself. It's time we stop doing that to our minds. Thank you so much for joining us and taking this deep dive into mental engineering. We will see you next time.